Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first live episode of Front Porch Politics. I'm Deontay Johnson, also maybe known as the president of the Black Conservative Federation. And today, you guys are joining us for our first ever episode of Front Porch Politics, where we have the conversations that no one else wants to have, and we make it very real, and it's live. It's not scripted. None of the other things that you may get from another show. But I got to tell you this: if you're watching us, I want you to know this. This is our front porch. You're joining our front porch. So if you want to come into the comments with some foolishness, you can leave it in the comments, but we're not going to engage. This is here for a good time, but also to discuss solutions and discuss how we can truly change America and just have a good time while doing it. So grab a chair, grab your iced tea, your lemonade, or your adult beverage and join us. But I'm not doing this alone. Today, I am joined by Quentin Jordan, who is the vice president of the Black Conservative Federation, also a commentator that has been seen on Fox News, Newsmax, CNN, MSNBC, and a host of other shows and a lot of podcasts. Quentin Jordan. The next person is Marquita Bushrod, who is also with the Black Conservative Federation, as our executive VP of operations. And she's joining us. We've seen her on Pop and Politics and so many other platforms as well. And last but not least is Melanie Collette, who is on Newsmax, a former commissioner in New Jersey. And her and I used to do shows all the time. And so I'm so glad to be back doing this again with her. And we're going to have some good fun. And we just glad that you guys can join us. Today's topic is a very important topic. The Democrats tend to believe that Black people have lost their voting rights and that we can't vote come next election. That's what they say. But we say maybe it's the politicians who have lost their power. Quentin, I'm going to start with you because this topic has just been happening all week. The NAACP has started to make announcements and it's just a lot of craziness. What's your thoughts on it?
It's ridiculous. I mean, I think it's the typical Democrat strategy whenever they're in a position where they're about to lose power. What we've seen from blue states for as long as I can remember is they gerrymander or redistrict districts all across the state in their favor. And they typically never go through the level of scrutiny that you've seen happen in these red states that they're complaining about. These states have gone to their state Supreme Courts all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court to have this actually legalized, right? What they're saying is that, hey, we don't want to just make these decisions on our own. We don't want to just put it to a vote. We actually want to go through the court systems to understand if what we're doing has any legal standing. And the U.S. Supreme Court came back and essentially ruled in their favors. And I think it's very, very predictable, but also hypocritical that the Democrats are using race and racism as another fear-mongering tactic, because I want everybody to look and pay attention to what just happened in Alabama during their Democratic primary for governor. Democrats have spent the last 2 to 3 months complaining, protesting, hitting the streets about losing representation because they don't have Black people being put into these offices. And they just had the opportunity to elect not 1, not 2, but 3 different Black gubernatorial candidates. And they chose not to push any of them forward. And they went with a white candidate who got more votes than all 3 of them combined by almost double. And I'm not mad at that, because the reasoning that they're using is that they didn't look at race. They looked at who the best person for that position was. And I just find that very hypocritical, because anytime a Republican says that, when we say, hey, it's not based on race, let's look at the merit, let's look at what these people actually bring to the table and the solutions they can put forward, Democrats will literally look you in your eyes and call you racist. They will say that's Jim Crow. And then when they're put on the chopping block to do the exact same thing, they're using the same language that they hate. So again, it's the typical Democrat strategy. I don't expect anything less.
Marquita, you're from New York. And being from New York, you know that gerrymandering has been done by the Democrats for quite some time. I mean, New York is completely gerrymandered. Quentin's from Chicago, and in Illinois, those maps are drawn crazy. I mean, let me ask you this question. If Black voters, if black members of Congress, black Democrat members of Congress are being gerrymandered out of their districts and they're being replaced with a black Republican, is that a voting rights issue or is that a power?
Oh, is she muted?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Actually, it might be a little bit of both, but this is the thing. It's a common page out of the same book, the same script that we're used to. What I would implore people to do is to consider, well, instead of allowing it to continue on as we have, I need the voter to wake up a little bit here. I need the voter to become informed, and I need them to think about, how this has happened time and time again. I need people to stop being willfully ignorant. And so I think, to your question, it's a little bit of both here. I think, though, that we need to focus on the issue at hand. We need to do what's right, and we need to stand up. And I need people from both sides to say, hey, this is wrong, and we need to fix it. So I'd rather not focus on, hey, it continues to happen, but what is going to be the solution going forward?
Yeah, that's the thing. We're talking about solutions, but Democrats don't usually operate in solutions. They operate with feelings. They operate with emotions. They operate on who's racist and who's not racist, and is a man or a woman. They don't really know those things. And so you're putting solutions in the hands of people who don't even know what a woman is. Melanie, speaking of women, you have been in politics for so long. And
don't do that.
So long. But listen, I think you have been in state leadership and county leadership, and you're from New Jersey. And so we tried to flip New Jersey, and
we were this close.
Past election cycle. What are people in New Jersey saying? Do they care about redistricting? Because New Jersey is
well, they don't already redistrict. They don't redistrict the districts. Like they've done it. New Jersey is very similar to New York in that regard. And it's really amusing to me that the Democrats are losing their minds because Republicans, under the leadership of our current presidential administration, President Trump, have decided to actually fight back and not say, "Oh my gosh, we don't want to do that because it's not right. We shouldn't." No, you got to play by the rules that are on the board. And the Democrats, make no mistake, the Democrats made these rules. We are simply playing by the rules that they have given us. And because they have already gerrymandered their congressional districts to death, they don't have much left to do. But I will say that the thing that really amuses me the most about this entire argument is the fact that the Democrats are pretending like they're not trying to be abject racist by creating these racist voting blocks. During the civil rights movement, people worked long and hard to be desegregated. And what the Democrat Party and those on the left are trying to do right now is to resegregate us so that we stay voting blocks, so that they can continue to have power and control over the voting blocks. And what I believe, and I think that's what we all believe, is that the founding fathers intended it for us to have individual votes and not vote as a block. And if we stop voting as a block, then the elites that are trying to control us won't have that control anymore. But I think it's interesting, and I think it's hypocritical that they're using words that indicate that they're not being racist, like race conscious voting, race conscious districting. No, it's still racist no matter what you call it. I don't care how you rebrand it, repackage it. Anything regarding race that you do by race, that you segregate by race, is racism on its face. You cannot have it both ways.
Yeah, I think the more interesting part, right, if you just think about the message that Democrat leadership all across the country has been saying since Trump got in office, they'll say that this administration and Republicans across the country don't follow the law. Look at Virginia. Virginia quite literally went against their own state constitution blatantly. And then when it went to the state Supreme Court, it got shot down. They went to the U.S. Supreme Court, it got shot down. And now they're looking at the southern states who went through the same process, and the court sided with them. And they're saying that, well, not only are they now following the law, but it's the judges who got it wrong. At first, it was we weren't going through the court system. We didn't know what the legal standing was. Now, since the courts are siding with them, the courts don't know what the courts are talking about. The judges need to be removed. It's literally ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, Melanie, you said it best, is that I'm so glad Republicans are standing up and we're fighting back. And when we fight, we win. And so that's the premise of the conversation. By the way, those who are whether you're viewing on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. We're just starting. Let's keep this show going. Let's keep invite people to join us as we continue to talk about the things that really matter. Now, listen, the NAACP now are telling athletes that they should not participate they should not follow their dreams in southern states. That's what's being said right now.
Are they telling that to the doctors and the lawyers? Are they telling them not to go out and be great? But they're telling
they're telling it to everybody. They're telling it to the athletes. They're telling it to their families. They're telling it to their fans. And it's just the most ridiculous idea that you can possibly put forward, because what is your alternative? I said this on social media, but the NAACP is telling students and their families to boycott these schools because they're in states that no longer have Black majority districts. Where are you going to send them? You're going to tell them to go to schools where? What other states have Black majority districts? You don't solve the problem by going after the institutions that have quite literally nothing to do with the court rule. And this went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. So why would you penalize student athletes who are in some cases in positions where they're generating generational wealth? They're pulling their families out of poverty. They're not only there on athletic scholarships, but a lot of these students are there on educational scholarships. And, there were a lot of people in the comments who were saying that, they can just go to HBCUs and they can get these same opportunities. I'm a graduate of an HBCU. I fully support the idea that our HBCUs need to be expanded, but we have to be serious. Our HBCUs are not set up for the type of opportunities that a lot of these top athletes and top students have at their fingertips, right? You're talking about some of these students coming out of high school to $1 million NIL contracts. There are no HBCUs who can support that at scale. And also some of these schools like the University of Alabama, they have almost double the amount of Black students that the average HBCU has. And so the infrastructure for our HBCUs is just not there, because these conversations should have started 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, not just now because you're mad that the Democrats lost in court.
I think that's an excellent point that you bring up, because you can't say that you stand behind Blacks continuing on and furthering themselves financially through education, through careers, and then you want to stifle them this way. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And then the part that they're leaving out is that these schools not only have Black students, Black student athletes, they have Black staff, they have Black administration. There are people who literally have come up for generations through these schools. And they're essentially telling everybody in the country to turn their backs on these institutions. It's just ridiculous.
And, the other point that's being missed by them telling them that they shouldn't participate in the process is that the United States does have a process to change laws through our Constitution, unlike any other country in the world. So really, I think the advice would be to get involved with politics, to study the Constitution, to study the way the law works and change the law. Try to change the law, try to change the policies, but instead they're encouraging them not to participate. And I think that is absolutely the wrong advice. I think that probably everybody on this panel has learned one lesson over the course of time. And part of the reason why we got into politics is that in order to change the system, you got to be in the system. And you have to educate yourself about the system. You have to learn the rules of the game, and then you play the game to make change.
That's true, but too many people would wake up if they were allowed into the political realm. So I think that's another problem. That's another reason why they're not interested in that.
Yeah. And then I think I saw a comment on either Facebook or YouTube about a 5 to 6 year plan. I think the plan should have happened already, right? A 5 to 6 year plan is great. We absolutely have to get more capital flowing to our HBCUs. And the reality is that a lot of capital flows to universities through athletic programs, right? People like supporting successful athletic programs. That's not just a PWI thing, that's an HBCU thing. The biggest time of year at any HBCU in the country is always going to be homecoming. There's so much money that flows around homecoming for those games. If we're starting to talk about getting star athletes out of high school to our HBCUs, yeah, that's a plan that I'm all for, but it's not going to happen overnight. And I also don't think that it takes boycotting schools that have invested into these athletes for decades for us to be able to do that.
You know, one of the things that I like is that, you know, we're doing all this boycotting in southern states. We're talking about Black districts. But you ever notice that the people that are actually the loudest mouthpieces don't live in the Black districts?
Of course not.
You know, you got people like Roland Martin, who lives in Loudoun County in a gated community, who's there marching and protesting with him. But then when it's all said and done, he gets off his plane in first class and he drives about 30 minutes from the airport to Loudoun County. And he then goes into his gated community, into his safe home, and lives a good life. But he's oppressed. He's struggling. This administration has held him back. The only thing that this administration has held him back from is continuing to spew the same lies and to continue to muster the same race-baiting hate that he does. But that happens with so many other people, that these are all the individuals who they're living these lavish lives, but then they want to go back and tell everyone else that they're oppressed and that they're going through. And that's what the Democratic Party has done. The Democratic Party is known for being ground zero for struggling people and keeping struggling people struggling. It's all about power. It's all about power.
Yeah. Without the struggle, they don't have anything to promote, right? And you know, they tried to make it very difficult for Black people who are conservative in their thinking, who are, you know, Bible believing Christians and believe in the Constitution. They tried to make it difficult for us to speak, for us to have a voice, and they still do. I mean, I'm sure that there's nobody on this call who has not been bullied, who has not been called all kinds of names on social media, privately and otherwise, who has not been chastised and everything else. They tried to make it difficult. And, you know, until I think, you know, when Barack Obama got elected, I honestly believe that he was the beginning of the end as far as us getting along, so to speak, racially and politically. I think when he got elected, I think he was extremely divisive, and I think that's what led to us getting a Donald Trump. And you can argue whether or not he has divisive language, but I think the divide was already there. And part of what being a part of his administration and supporting him says is, just because you're Black does not mean you cannot have conservative values. And you are safe to actually absolutely say that. And that free speech should absolutely be protected. And sometimes you have to say that in a rough and tumble way, in a clear way to be communicated. All this words of violence and you can't say this and you can't say that is ridiculous. And we already had a rough time, I think, being on the right and being Black. I think when this new Obama Trump era came up, things got very worse, only because the left sees that they are losing their grip on the monolith that is the Black vote. And it's not even a monolith in truth. When you talk to people one-on-one in the Black community, many of them are very conservative leaning in their thinking and in their policies, right? But may or may not know the history because they're being told by their family members, by their friends that, you know, all Republicans are racist and that everybody on the right is a racist. And they listen to that foolishness. And if you, God forbid, you watch the mainstream media and listen to the mainstream media, they're giving out a completely different narrative. And if you are not intellectually curious or politically curious and take in a diverse amount of media, you're going to believe the hype. And that's what we're suffering from. And I think that's why the left is just so angry about movements like this, about movements like BCF, about shows like this, about people like us who are very vocal about our conservatism. I think they're legitimately angry, and maybe it's affecting their brains. And that's why they are thinking about things like packing the Supreme Court and just crazy, insane things like keeping athletes from going to school and creating that generational wealth. It's not right. It's not even logical in their thinking what they're doing. They need to get back in with us and work together and negotiate to change the laws if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, and I think the more interesting part to notice about this entire discussion about these districts, there's not one single Democrat who has mentioned the word results. You will not see any Democrat leadership get on national TV or get on their social media platforms and talk about the results that this representation has delivered for their districts, right? If you look at all of these districts across the board, what do they have in common? They have very high poverty rates. They have very high crime rates. They have very low literacy rates. And in almost every category that is meaningful and tangible to an actual person, they're far below the national average. And so you'll never hear the Democrat leadership tell you that, because there wouldn't even be a question or a conversation around representation or lack thereof if those things were being delivered upon. Because what you would have if you had increases in all of these categories, we're talking financial, we're talking educational, we're talking safety. If people were delivering on this, they would get elected by everyone. There wouldn't be a party divide here. You wouldn't have Democrats wanting to keep them in place solely for their black faces or lack thereof, because not all of the people who represent these districts are black. But you also wouldn't have Republicans solely against this, right? In states like Tennessee, Memphis has had one of the highest crime rates in the country, especially for big cities, for as long as I've been born. And they've had the exact same type of leadership in place. Why isn't the NAACP talking about that? Why aren't they out in the streets getting millions of people to go and protest against that? The kids there cannot read. The kids there are not safe going to school. The kids there are simply not going to school. And that's the case for all of these districts. Why isn't that the conversation? Why is it, oh, we no longer are going to have black people sitting in these seats? Why isn't it, oh, we're going to push forward the best person to represent these districts and deliver on these results, regardless if they're black, regardless if they're white? We want people to succeed and advance. Why isn't that the conversation? I would love for somebody from the NAACP or even the Roland Martins of the world who love to hop in my comments to get on here and tell me that.
I mean, solutions or something. I mean, results. I
think it's the same reason why they don't, complain about or. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you never hear. You never hear the solutions. You never hear. It's so funny because I always go and just listen to Democrats' campaign speeches, and it's always Republicans this, Donald Trump this, Donald. I said, what are you going to do? We know what you don't like that the Republicans do, but what are you going to do? And this is what has constantly happened over and over again. Kamala and Joe Biden got in without saying that a single policy point if they were of anything they were going to do. Kamala then wanted to take that and run, and Americans was tired. It's funny though, because I just pulled up today, the Democratic Party released their autopsy report on what happened in 2024. I say that Republicans just got fed up and decided, and not just Republicans, independents and Americans got fed up and decided that we needed something besides Democrats. But one line, they use this phrase that they learned, this is what they learned, is that demographics aren't destiny.
No kidding.
In political code, that means minority voters are no longer automatically Democratic. Welcome to 2026.
Man, you don't say.
Listen, we've been trying to tell you that we're not monolithic for a while, but yet still have not learned that. And even till today, they still have not figured out what they're going to do with black men. Black men are just, they're constantly leaving in droves from the Democratic Party because there's nothing that is keeping them there.
Yeah.
In 2020, we saw 2024, we saw this tremendously as we were traveling around the country. We saw that black men was like, there's nothing there for us, and we want something different. And that is where we're at. That is why we constantly have the same situations. Quentin, Marquita, Nicole, let's get a closing statement before we bring on our first guest.
Listen, this is just episode 1. Like, if you're enjoying this conversation, we can talk about all of this stuff for hours. We're going to be coming at you guys with some of the best, most relevant topics. So if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, share all of the above. I believe our socials are going to be shared on here if they aren't already, but stay around. We're going to have some amazing guests, and our conversations are only going to get better.
Absolutely. And feel free, send over some comments, some things that you'd like to hear us talk about as well. There's a lot going on in the media. We can't do everything, but we're interested in knowing what our audience is interested in as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think Deontay called me Nicole, but that's okay because I love Nicole. Nicole's great. We love her. But this is Melanie. But yes, thank you so very much. Those of you who are on and watching and listening, we absolutely appreciate you. Appreciate your support. Don't forget to like and share. This is the one time I say it's okay to highlight your followers. You know, we don't want to do that too much, but right now you might want to go on ahead and do that and stick with us for our next guest that's coming up.
Yeah, listen, y'all, it's getting good. The good is getting, and it's going to be a great time. We're just like, listen, this is a fun time, but we're uncovering things that people aren't seeing. We're on the front porch. I hope you got your iced tea. I hope you got your Corona, tequila if you're a tequila drinker. Listen, we're on the front porch. We're having a good old time. The R&B is going to start pretty soon. But before we get there, you guys seen what happened with the Supreme Court decision, and the one state that it affected the most was Louisiana. And everyone's talking about Louisiana and it's racist and there's all this racism coming out of Louisiana. But guess what? Our next guest is the executive director of the Louisiana GOP. And so we're going to hear directly from the horse's mouth on what's happening in Louisiana, why things are happening in Louisiana the way they're happening, and what their strategy is in the fight. Corey Dennis is the executive director of the Louisiana GOP, and we're proud to welcome him to the stage. Corey Dennis, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Corey, we've known each other for a long time.
That's right.
And you have been very active in the fight of everything from governor races to Senate races. And now you're in the middle of a redistricting battle. Corey, you're racist. You're racist, Corey. Just want you to be racist.
Apparently so. And I've been sticking around and hearing for the last 2 weeks or so about how all my lovely Republican friends are also racist. Shout out to my good friend, Senator Jay Morris, who's carrying the bill for redistricting. He's been getting a lot of flack recently, even death threats. And so my thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. But, again, thanks for having me on the show. And I loved listening to everything y'all said beforehand. I have a bunch of thoughts on that as well. But, yeah, it's just crazy. I think Quentin said it the best is every time the Democrats don't get what they want or they lose, they just claim racism because it's the lowest hanging fruit. And you don't really have to prove racism anymore. You can just say it. The Democrats are really good at just saying things like they're fact without any evidence or proof of it.
So, listen, you guys just had an election.
Yep.
And what was the results of that and what came from that?
So we had our primary election, first time in Louisiana, had a closed primary in quite some time. We're really proud of that. It's interesting that the liberals would like to recall now our governor and our attorney general for their stance on redistricting. They need about 500,000 signatures to do that. And the Democrats didn't even have 500,000 voters show up to the polls on Saturday. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. But we're in a runoff situation now. The Democratic Senate nominee and the Republican Senate nominee, our congressional races have been postponed until November, pending the redistricting. The map passed the Senate last week. It's in House committee today. They're probably still taking testimony as we speak to talk about how racist we are and all those types of things. But I know that map's going to pass, and hopefully we'll get it through the House. And any reconciliation that needs to happen, hopefully sometime next week, and then we'll finally have a constitutional map in the state of Louisiana, which apparently they have a problem with.
You know, it's funny. I don't think that most people even know that folks like Corey exist, right? If you were to tell half of America that the chairperson of the Louisiana GOP was Corey, they wouldn't believe it because everything that they've heard from the left is all about racism, no black people, no representation, etc. So I think it's important for people to not only hear what you have to say, but to see your face,
Mhm.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's another funny point that you had talked about earlier was, Black voters voting in a block and things in that nature. And I think largely in the national scale right now, we are seeing that. But I will say specifically in Louisiana over the last couple of cycles, we've noticed a split. For example, we have a white Republican governor, Jeff Landry. I was his campaign manager, and there was about 14 other people running, one of which was a Black Democrat who was the outgoing secretary of the Department of Transportation. And if enough people cared about having a Black governor and only cared about having a Black governor, our governor, Jeff Landry, wouldn't have won in the first primary, right? Fast forward a year after that, city of Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge Parish, there was the incumbent mayor president was a Black woman Democrat who had served for 8 years, 2 terms, was trying to run for a 3rd term. There was another Black man Democrat running in that race. And then we had a white Republican who had never run for political office before, was a football coach at a predominantly Black high school in the Baton Rouge area. And the Black guy didn't make the runoff, and it was just the incumbent and Coach Sid Edwards. And again, there was enough Black votes there that if they wanted to reelect the Black mayor, they could have, right? But the problem was, we were talking about results. They saw the lack of results that she had. The streets were still dirty. No one felt safe in their own homes, and all the promises she made weren't being kept. So Black voters, and especially Black influencers in the Baton Rouge area, were willing to take a chance on Coach Sid because what they had wasn't working. And I think on the local levels across the country, certainly in Louisiana, you're starting to see that block get fractured, and people are voting more for results and more about their conscience than just the party they grew up in or what they're being told to do.
Let me ask you this question, Corey. Do you have, and if you don't, that's fine. Putting you on the spot. Do you guys have the numbers on where Black people voted in Louisiana in terms of Kamala Harris in the 2024 election?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, unfortunately. I do know that I believe our governor got about somewhere from, depending on who you talk to, anywhere from 10 to 18% of the Black vote. And I think Republicans traditionally on a statewide get around, a good percentage, be 5 or 8. So again, I don't have the numbers for the presidential race, but I do know that, again, we're starting to see a trend in Louisiana.
I've met your governor, saw him a couple of months ago, and he didn't seem racist to me.
That's because we're sellouts. No,
that's right. Yeah, I'm a sellout.
Right.
He invited me to come alligator hunting and have some alligator, and to me, that's music to my ears. And so I don't think racist people want to feed. I don't know what racist.
You talk about, you offered Deontay some food, like, some bread somewhere, anywhere.
That's music to my ears. And so
language.
We're hearing this, and I think we've had a lot of Black Republican candidates that have ran in Louisiana. I think, BCF is opening up a chapter in Louisiana as well.
Yep, really excited about that.
I just had a conversation about that, but and we're all about solutions, and if solutions are going to, if solution-oriented people are going to run, we need to bring in and hire solution-oriented people. I don't know where people get off where it doesn't matter. It's all about the skin color. Which if I have a company, I'm going to hire the most qualified person. As a voter, you're the HR of the country. You're the HR of these states. You're the HR of these counties. Why are you not hiring the most qualified person? Why does it matter what race they are? If the most qualified person is yellow, hire that yellow person. That is what we have to get to. And I'm sorry that you guys are experiencing this. I'm sorry that the elected officials are experiencing this because this is all about power. This is not about Black representation. This is not about, any of that. I mean, if it was about Black representation, Cedric Richmond would not have left his seat and went to the White House and gave his seat away. If it was all about Black representation, make sure there's Black people, around, represented. And so this is just an issue that is just continuing to have. So let me ask you this question. The seat that is going to be redrawn, tell us about that seat.
Well, right now it's looking like the seat that Cleo Fields currently occupies is going to be drawn out, and which again, if you look at the map that we currently have, to the seat that Cleo currently sits in, he represents half the state of Louisiana. I mean, it goes all the way up from Shreveport down to the Baton Rouge, New Orleans area, which if you look at Louisiana, there's not a whole lot that the people up in North Louisiana have in common with Baton Rouge or New Orleans. And, you know, he talks about how he can't change the color of his skin and all that to run. And again, it's just another fake outrage, race baiting argument. A good friend of mine once told me, you can't take the politics out of politics. And that's exactly what this is. You know, I'm a Republican. I want Republican seats. I didn't like the 4-2 map. I want a 5-1 map. And that's exactly what we're going to get, because we have the legislature, we have the governor, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles. The Democrats do the same thing in every other state. I'm originally from Maryland, Deontay, you know that. They just tried to draw out Andy Harris a couple months ago, and I think that got shot down as well. So, look, you know, it's not about race or all. It's about they want to be in power. And frankly, they don't even care about the country or race or equality or anything like that. Someone in the Senate and the House committee today in Louisiana just mentioned that the Republicans are scared of doing this because the Democrats are going to win the midterm and we're going to impeach Donald Trump. They don't even, that's all they care about. They care about being able to potentially impeach a duly elected president for doing the job that the people elected him to do. And in Louisiana, you know, again, the voter registration is very close, Republican, Democrat. I think hopefully by the end of the year, that Republicans will overtake the Democrats finally for the first time in Louisiana history. But for several election cycles now, Louisiana voters have voted conservative. Whether they're registered Democrats, no party, or Republican, they have voted conservative for several election cycles in a row. If you look at our congressional maps, if you look at the presidential, you look at the governor's races, state Senate, state House. And a lot of that has to do with open primaries. For a long time, it didn't matter what party you're registered as, right? Now with the closed primaries, you're starting to see people actually stick to the party that they actually believe in. But again, Louisiana is a conservative state. I don't care what the registration says. And again, this redistricting is about reflecting the voting desires of our citizens.
So let's say you were to run in that district, and if you do run, let me know. But if you were to run in that district as a Black Republican, is it, and I asked Marquita this question earlier, are we still talking? I mean, if there's Black representation, do they have a problem with that?
Oh, absolutely they would. They absolutely would, because it's not about Black representation. It's about Black Democrat representation. Look, we had a conversation the other day with a good friend of mine that's a Black conservative that's probably going to run for Congress, or he announced he's going for Congress, and will probably continue after redistricting is done. And those same people that are claiming about Black representation would not be happy with him, because I think I said this the other day, liberals don't care about Black excellence. They care about Black brainwashing. It's a very crabs in a barrel situation once you start thinking for yourself, going against the status quo. And again, if you look at the redistricting debate that we have right now, all the arguments against our map are race-based. When the Supreme Court just said you can't draw a map based on race, and that's exactly what we did. And so again, I think the conversation is going to be interesting moving forward. I would like to see more Black conservatives run for office. That doesn't mean that I want to do that, for the record, but I would like to see that more. And look, I do think the Republican Party and conservatives, we do need to do a better job of showing Black voters that I believe we're right, that we have the better plan. We're results driven, and we have the results to prove it. I think for a long time, the Democrats have just taken Black voters for granted. I think Republicans have accepted that in a large way and haven't really tried to court that vote. And I think if we can make a more concerted effort, I think the president's done a great job of that. I think our governor's done a great job of that. Our governor's actually grew up in a predominantly Black town, St. Martinville in Louisiana. And so I think if you're intentional about those things, I think we can really make some headway. And it's not going to be, it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take several months, years, or in several election cycles to get there. But I do think for a long time we haven't done the best job of explaining that to Black voters.
I think anybody who's been in the mix in this space for a minute, especially as a Black Republican, would 100% co-sign that sentiment. And to your point, during the last election cycle, the Trump campaign most definitely made actually both times, both cycles, all three cycles, was very intentional about reaching out to the Black vote in various ways. And the conventional wisdom had been that it's a waste of time. And I think he proved, if nothing else, that that is absolutely not the case. Because the thing is, and I think we all know this if you worked on campaigns, Republicans only need like 5-10% of the Black vote to be over the top. Whereas Democrats need that 95-99% of the Black vote. We don't. So we have a much easier lift when you think about it if we're more intentional about it on a local level. Now, we don't have, locals don't have the resources that the Trump campaign had. That's part of the, issue. But I think the model is there, and we can work toward that model.
Look, it's like the movie says, it's a game of inches, right? And elections is a game of margins. We don't need a large margin of Black voters to succeed. And the more we get of that is more likely we are to succeed, but also that's more people will bring into the tent, bring into the party. Our Attorney General, Liz Muriel, I worked with in the AG's office, does an amazing job for Louisiana. She always says, you can't win if you don't fight. Yeah. And we will never get the Black voters if we don't fight for them. And look, maybe we only get 1% of them this time. Maybe we only get 2%, but we will never get them if we don't try.
That's, as someone who has flipped 2 governor mansions, first in Illinois with Governor Bruce Rauner, and then again in Virginia with Governor Glenn Youngkin. Percentages matter. In Illinois, if you get 20% of Cook County, the Republicans will win. Just 20%. If you have to focus on counties, you have to focus on congressional districts, you have to focus on and just worry about the percentage. And that's what we did in 2024 with the Black Conservatives Federation, is that we said, no, we're not going to just focus on the state. We're going to look at counties. So in Pennsylvania, while everyone was focusing on going into Philadelphia, we were looking at Montgomery County and Delaware County and seeing what we can do there. And the same thing for Wisconsin. We were looking at Waukesha and some of those counties that, everyone's not focused on, but if we can pull those percentages out from, we can do it. Now, that is also values voters. Those are voters who are focused not on skin color. They're not focused on, I need a Black person. They're focused on, listen, I need to make sure that my child gets the best education. Those are the folks that said, I need to make sure that my taxes are lower. I need to make sure that I can have safe communities. Those are what they were focusing on. And that is why the Black community, this is why we continue to lose out. This is why we continue to be the bottom of everything, is because we don't focus on that. We focus on emotion. We're not focusing on how can we make our schools better. Let's talk about the schools in these Black represented districts. Let's talk about the economy in these Black represented districts. We want to talk about, the rich person is doing this and this person doing that. Let's talk about Black wealth in our district, in our communities. Those are conversations that they're not having, and that's why we constantly lose out.
Yeah, because all that the Democrats have to do is show up at Black churches around election season or during times like this when there's a national story going on about Black representation and the Black vote, and pull the Justin Pearson and just catch the Holy Ghost on stage randomly and never talk about what it is.
Don't forget the Afro wig.
It might be a wig. I don't know. It's ridiculous. But you never have to talk about the solutions that you're actually going to bring to the table. You never have to talk about your record. You never have to talk about the fact that you represent part of Memphis, which is one of the only cities that in 2024, when the national household income rose for most folks, it went down. It declined for Memphis. How do you, as a representative of a district that covers a city like that, how do you get people to show up and continue to vote for you if you don't fearmonger them based on race?
Well, that's because you have a white member of Congress representing a majority black area, quote unquote. He's just doing what what white Democrats do, want to see black people not succeed, and so that's why it stays that way. That's why Memphis is the worst, one of the most dangerous cities in America. It's because yes, it's ran by Democrats. It's ran by a white Democrat who is constantly pushing what white Democrats want. I'm sorry if that offends anyone who's watching. White Democrats don't care about black people.
Yeah, the best way that I tell people to think about the black vote and why it's become less and less fought for by Democrats is this. Think about it as like a football team, right? If I know I'm going up against a team that runs the exact same offense every single game, every single play, it is so easy for me to strategize against you. I don't have to go out and try to win your vote if I already know how you're going to vote. I don't have to try to stop your play if I already know what your play is. I'm just going to go around it. I'm going to strategize around it. That's why you saw Republicans going for these different districts in a lot of these swing states and winning. You talk about Pennsylvania with, the Bucks counties and the things of that sort. We know we're not going to win a majority of the black vote because for the last 50 plus years, it's only gone one way. So what do? We sit back and we strategize on how to go around it. And that is why I think people need to wake up, especially black voters, and say, hey, we can't be this easy of a target because our vote is becoming less and less relevant for these reasons.
Corey, before you leave, what can we do? How can we help you? How can we be supportive of what you're doing and provide, you guys support in just everything? Like, tell us what we can do because we don't want you guys aren't fighting this battle alone. We're here. The country is with you. Well, the Republican Party is with you, and we want to help you guys through this. So what can we do? What can anyone watching?
Well, I appreciate that. I think the first and foremost thing is, continue to pray for us, pray for our country, and pray for our state. I think that's the most important thing that anyone can do for us. But the other thing is if you live in Louisiana, if you have friends in Louisiana, have them reach out to the party, go to LAGOP.com. And so we can start having these conversations. And I'm excited to have a BCF chapter here in Louisiana. And I think, the biggest thing that can be helpful to us is helping us engage better with black voters and reminding folks that all these, this last election, we had a lot of Soros-funded PACs telling people to vote certain ways on amendments and things like that. And I think we need to, black voters, all of us black voters need to realize that they're telling us to vote against our own interests or to do things against our own interests. You talked about the NAACP telling folks not to go to Southern schools. Athletes have to go to Southern schools. Hate to break it to you. The fact of the matter is, if you play football and you want a chance to go in the NFL, LSU is one of the top schools in the country that you need to go to. And those are the facts. So you're actively telling black people to stop chasing their dreams because you're upset with who currently occupies the White House.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, but this is the game. And we're going to get deeper into the conversation. I don't want you to get into any trouble because we're about to say some things that is probably not politically correct. But and for those of you guys who are watching, there will be a segment in a couple of weeks called "Take Me Off Speaker," which means we're going to have the conversation. Like we're having a real conversation now, but it's going to get real. But Corey, thank you so much for joining us. You're always welcome on our porch. Next time, bring some gumbo and crawfish.
I will.
We'll continue the conversation. Thank you so much. And
we appreciate you.
Yes.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, look at that. We heard it straight from the horse's mouth. Who's black? Not racist, I don't think. that this is a common sense issue, but and there was somebody in the comments, and I forget who it was, that was running their mouth about voting rights being stripped away. I don't know if she doesn't understand any of us. Republicans are literally stripping away black voting power.
Literally.
Oh, hold on. Okay. Listen, we can leave it right there. Black voting power.
I can't.
You see this hat? There's nothing in this hat. There is more in this hat than black people have of voting power. There is no black voting power. You have no power. You give 90% of your vote to one party. That's not power. That's control. Let's talk about we're stripping you away from black control. We're not stripping you away from black voting power. We're stripping you away from black control. We can cut the cord. The leash is coming off.
Nope, you said
Justin, I believe his name is Julian. Julian, let me ask you this. If you could just simply show up to work and consistently not do anything, if you had quotas that you didn't meet, if your KPIs and statistics continuously were below average and on a decline, but somehow you not only kept your job, but you got a raise, you got fame, and you got all of these things, do you think that you would show up and start doing work all of a sudden? No, you would not. That's the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party knows that they don't have to do anything for these communities, and they will still get voted into office because the culture votes for Democrats. There are two things that you are born as, typically, when you're born in America as a black person. Number one, you're born black. Number two, you're more than likely born a Democrat. So for you to sit here and say that we're losing voting power and we're losing voting rights, what voting power? What voting power? Everyone in America knows how the black community is going to vote. The reason that you're starting to see even a slight shift in that, understand this, the NAACP is panicking. Organizations like the NAACP are panicking because the black vote is shifting maybe 5%. Do you understand that? It's not even like a 50% shift or a 25% shift. It's about a 5% shift away from Democrats, and they're panicking because now they understand that somebody else is looking on this side of the fence and they're coming up with solutions, and they're going to start forcing us to either come up with solutions or they're going to force us to simply do our jobs. We asked this earlier in the podcast. Why is the conversation not about results? Why is the conversation only about representation? What results have Democrats produced in these districts? Why are you fighting so hard for the bottom of the barrel when it comes to somebody being in office on your behalf? Why are you accepting of that?
Can we talk about, did anybody see the comment? I think Kimberly Frazier said, if black doesn't mean anything, why do you keep saying black? Why don't you just say Americans? Who said that it didn't mean anything?
We're not saying that black doesn't mean anything. Black means a whole hell of a lot. We're saying that the black vote is so obvious in terms of which way it's going to go that it has become almost irrelevant.
No, it hasn't become irrelevant. It is irrelevant.
They're conflating. I feel like people conflate our skin color with our culture. We have a united bond as Americans. And then you have another bond as black folks. And then even within the black community, you have united bonds as to what your descendants come from, what part of Africa you might come from. You might come from the Caribbean. You could come from all these different places, or you could have grown up in a rural area. You could have grown up in the city. You're still black, and so you have a common thread, right? And cultures are in common, but you also have many differences. And what we're trying to acknowledge is that while we have a common thread of being black folks, and because of the structure of the political landscape where 90% of black folks are voting for Democrats, that's why the black vote exists and what takes away our power. We're not saying, and we're also not saying that being black is more important than anything else, right? Which is the problem everywhere else.
There's another comment here.
Most important thing.
So there's another comment here. I think it's from Jefferson, who's saying that we don't have a plan. We're just here supporting MAGAism. I don't know if the entire point of this has just flown over your head, but we're literally talking about what the strategy is. The strategy and the plan moving forward is to not simply vote for people just because they look like you. Show up and ask people, what have they done? What do they plan to do? The situations in these districts and in these specific areas has not improved. In many cases, it has gotten worse. That is the plan. The plan is to simply say, hey, I will only vote for you if you have delivered results or if you have an actual strategy on how you plan to deliver results. So for you to say that we don't have a plan, you just have completely missed the entire message.
Additionally, it's the lack of a requirement. When was the last time that us as Black people got together and said, this is what we're going to require of our leadership?
Yeah.
Ice Cube tried it during the
Do we
last.
even know what we want? That's the thing. Everyone thinks, oh, it's a monolith. You know, we vote one way, but then it's like, well, no, because each of us have different issues that we care about. We could talk about the kitchen table issues, the front porch issues. I mean, we all have different sectors of our lives that are more pertinent than others. But I think we need to come together, make a plan, make a requirement, and not shun people. I believe Ice Cube previously stepped forward and tried to get a plan. There have been other celebrities and other folks in the political realm in the last few elections that have tried to come forward and do something, and then they get shunned for talking with the ops. If we continue to do that, we're going nowhere fast. We're on the hamster wheel of doom here. We can't get. I
believe it was the last election, or even prior to that, where Kamala literally sat down and told Black people that she's not going to come up with a plan specifically for Black Americans.
Right.
And for some reason, people were okay with that. Whereas on the other side, you had Trump, who came up with the Platinum Plan. And he said, hey, this is what I plan to do specifically for Black America. And then, Marquita, you mentioned Ice Cube. Ice Cube said, look, I put together a plan and I went to both parties. The Republicans heard me out. The Democrats told me to wait until after they get in office. And for some reason, people thought that was a good idea. Let's just make sure that you help us get in office, and then we'll double back to you to talk about a plan. How does that help anyone?
It's like Groundhog Day. It constantly happens every election cycle. Every election cycle, there's some type of race issue. I hate to say it, but we'll probably have some type of police brutality issue coming very soon. It happens over and over again. Just real quick shout out to KJ from Poppin' Politics, our good friends over from Poppin' Politics. Yes, please like, comment, subscribe, share. This is good. Listen, we may have to add a day because it's just so much conversation, so much material. But we thank you guys so much for joining in with us. And listen, the Black vote is up for grabs to Republicans and to everyone else who thinks that they have voting power. When you stop giving 90% of your vote to one party, then you'll start to gain the power. Because this is the thing. Republicans sometimes are like, why even bother? And Democrats are like, we already got it. So why bother? Who loses? Black folks loses because then nothing happens in our community. If you truly want things to happen in your community, you make politicians work for your vote. That's a Democrat, that's a Republican, that's an independent. Make them work for your vote. Your kids need a better education. Do you not agree that your kids need a better education? You need more money in your pocket. Do you not think you need more money in your pocket? Your communities, our communities have to be better. And that's all that has to happen. If that is not what you're focused on, then listen, keep voting Democrat and keep on doing crazy things like saying that your vote is not it's so okay. So they have a rally. They say that the Supreme Court took away our voting power. Then they have a rally and tell people we need all of you guys to go out and vote, as if they didn't say that for Congress. They didn't say that the last year before, and they didn't say that the votes are not there in the southern states. I don't care who all goes out and vote; it's not there. So, but then they're constantly. This is just it's a game. It's a game. They bring out Jamal Bryant, and he goes and starts to tell his old soliloquies and stories and do all that he needs to do. But we let's talk about what he did in Baltimore and the women that he cheated on and everything else. Yeah. But then we go to, and we listen, y'all, this is the front porch, so we having a front porch conversation. Then
I want to get back into some of these comments also, right? So I think Kimberly Frazier on Facebook, she's saying the reason that Kamala said that she wouldn't come up with a plan specifically for Black Americans is because it's illegal. There is nothing illegal about coming up with a plan. There's nothing illegal about coming up with a plan. Understand this: when people talk about plans, and I think I understand where you're going with this, but there's so many ways that you can help Black Americans without simply saying this is only for Black Americans. For example, the First Step Act.
Yeah.
Which race is overrepresented in prisons across America? Blacks. Mm-hmm. It's not only going to impact Black people, but the majority of people who are going to be impacted by this and benefit from this are Black Americans. When you talk about HBCU funding, that is a plan for Black America. Like, we can't just keep letting people off the hook and giving them
Mhm.
excuses for saying nonsense when it comes to advancing our needs.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's 8:00. We've been on for an hour. We got to do this again. You guys have to join us again. We're going to be back next Thursday. You have to join us, and we're going to have an even different conversation and news of the week and just the crazy things. We got to have a section on the show is crazy things Democrats say or just think about or anything, because it's sometimes I'm looking and I'm just like, what? Who?
Well, people don't
There?
think about what they say. They don't like absorb it and like consider it, like really think about like, is that reasonable? That what that
Mhm.
Democrat just said, does that and that's important. That's extremely important. But you did a good job, Mr. Johnson. You did a great job hosting, and
Thank you.
I quite enjoyed co-hosting with the four of my dear friends here, the three of my dear friends here. I appreciate you.
Listen, it's gonna listen. The roller coaster is just starting. I stopped from saying some of the things that I wanted to say. But we're gonna have that take me off speaker moment, and I gotta say some more things. But continue to join us, share the page, subscribe, comment, like. We're gonna have some more great guests on in the future, and we just pray that you guys enjoyed this first show. Congratulations on our first show, and you guys have a great Memorial Day weekend.
And also share this with the people who you love to argue with on social media, because we're going to be reading the comments. If they want to step in, we can have that conversation. So share it, friends, foes, all of the above.
Yep. And I think if anybody, I don't know, Deontay, you're the boss here. How you feel about people who there's a topic or policy that they'd really like us to discuss, that, they should mention it in the comments. They should let us know, and perhaps that's something that we can do a segment on. Yeah,
we love ideas. And listen, it's not just going to be conservatives on the show. We will be bringing some crazy Democrats, and we will have the good conversation.
I love my crazy Democrat friends. A few offered as soon as they found out we were doing this.
Justin Pearson, if you're listening, if you're watching, if you see this, and we will clip this, Justin Pearson, you are welcome to come on the show with your afro and tell us why you think Black people are losing their voting rights because you lost your district. But
I think you should tell Roland Martin he can come too, because he loves to have us on his show all outnumbered. Why don't he?
Oh, Roland, you're not going to come on my show lying. You're not going to come on my show lying and for the Democrats.
I'm just saying. So right?
Roland Martin, we call you out as well. Come educate us.
Robert Patillo, where you at?
All righty. You guys have a great night. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being the best part of Front Porch Politics.